Look at them babies. I don't know if you can get them up here in the light. There's no way that one was firing at all. It's completely melded in, so I don't know. So they're pretty ugly. So hey guys, welcome back to Rink's Garage. Today's episode we're going to be doing a little tune-up on the 79 Silverado half-ton. This is my dad's truck. I bought it 3-4 years ago, ended up selling it to him the next summer, but she's got a couple issues, so we're gonna fix a couple things. Use a touch of oil, so probably take a look at the valve stem seals and change the oil, of course. Don't think it's been changed. I never changed it. He said he ain't changed it, so she's got some miles on her. Other than that, misses on a couple cylinders, so we'll probably throw all new plugs and wires on it. And while we're under there, we're probably gonna delete on some stuff under the hood. So we'll pull her in the shop and get going. As you can hear, she's real rough idling. It might have more than 2 cylinders that aren't firing all the time. I don't know. We'll find out, I guess. All right, let's get the hood open and see what we got. So, Soul Girl's got a small block Chevy, most likely a 350. As you can see, the air conditioning has been deleted on already, so one thing we're going to do is get rid of that compressor and brackets and stuff, get that out of there. It's not needed since it's not working. And then another thing we're going to get rid of is this pollution control crap. There's about 4,000 vacuum lines that are probably leaking, along with some bad spark plug wires. That's most likely what's causing the miss in the idle and everything. So first thing, we'll pull the air cleaner off, untangle all this stuff. We'll get that compressor off, get her cleaned up a bit before we get to pulling the valve covers off. So got her tore down. I also did take the fan shroud off. Luckily it was one bolt was holding the whole thing in, so I just took the fan off and took the shroud out. Just to make more room, because we'll have to get on the crank snout down there to turn the engine over. So, but got the air conditioning pump off, pulled all the spark plug wires off this side, which, one other thing, I got the spark plugs here. As you can see, number 7, super duper carboned up and fouled. 5 has got a bunch of carbon stuck on it. 3 is not so bad. 1 was probably the best looking one, but they definitely could use a change. So I'd say 7 was definitely missing as much carbon as up on there. So next on the agenda, we want to get it rolled over to number 1 cylinder, which is your driver's side forward one. So it'll go 1, 2 is on this side, 3, 4, 5, 6. So next thing we're going to do is roll the engine over clockwise on the front of the crank with a breaker bar. And we're going to watch and try to get number 1 at top dead center. So we'll stick it on there and turn it over clockwise and watch our valves. And I'll get the camera set up and I'll explain it as we're spinning her over. So I'll get the breaker bar on here and I'll spin her over. So on number 1, this is our exhaust valve, this is our intake valve. And then we got intake, exhaust, exhaust, intake, intake, exhaust. So you can see the exhaust one is closest to the exhaust port. Intake one closest to the intake runner on the manifold. So we're going to spin her over and see where we're at. So you can see the exhaust one is opening up. The push rod is pushing it down. So we're coming up on exhaust stroke on number 1. So we'll keep rolling her over. So the exhaust valve is closing. So now we're coming up on, or going down on intake. So the intake valve is opening up, sucking the air in. Now when that closes, that's how we know we're coming up on top dead center. So once we know we're coming up on it, next thing we'll do is take a piece of wire. Now I stick that in the spark plug hole down so we touch the piston. And now you can turn it over and your wire will come up. And there, she stopped moving up. So now we're at top dead center. And most engines also will have a timing mark down here on the damper pulley, but this one is missing the piece that goes on the motor to tell you. So now we got number 1 at top dead center. So both of our valves are completely closed and loose. So now next we can go about taking these 2 rockers off. And before we do that, we want to put some air pressure in the spark plug, because we don't want to take the rockers off and take the valve springs off without that, or the valve could fall down into the engine. So I'll get my hose rigged up and we'll move on to the next step. So this is my hose set up. It's a Botten one, so it's got a couple different ends for different size spark plugs. So this will just wind right in the spark plug hole. And of course we got a valve. Let's hook this up to the air compressor. So I'll wind this in the spark plug hole. We'll get the air ready to go in there, and we'll pull them 2 rockers off. And then before we take the retainers off, we'll put some air to it. Alright, so we got our hose hooked into the spark plug hole. I don't have the air turned on yet. We're at top dead center. So next, what I'm going to do is pull them rockers off. And we got both push rods are spin pretty freely in here. So we know the valves are closed. So we'll just take the rockers off. So now with the rockers off, of course when we put air in, it's at top dead center, so it's going to want to push the piston down. So now that we got our push rods not connected, we can go back on the crank. We're going to want to turn it 180 degrees. So now we should be at the bottom with the piston. And then we can put our air to it. I'll open the valve up. Sounds like the air is going right out the exhaust. So that's telling me our exhaust valve has a severe leak in it. So that's not good. Alright, so I'm going to see if I can get a vice grips clamped on the exhaust valve. And we'll just see if we can spin it. Maybe there's a piece of carbon in there. We'll turn the air back on and see if it made any difference. I think she quit leaking out the exhaust. Now it's just leaking past the rings. I can hear it down in there. So I guess we could give her a try. Alright, so turn my air back on. And as you can hear, this thing does have pretty significant air going by the rings. You can actually feel it coming out of the lifter holes. So. But basically I just wound the nuts back on, and you're going to want a magnet to grab the clips. So we'll stick the ring compressor on, we'll push the valve down like that, and then you might need a pick. Stick the pick in there, grab that clip. You want to be careful not to drop them down into the engine because they will fit through this hole. There we go. him out of there. Now we can let up on the spring. You can slide the spring off. And then right around the base here is our wiper seal, and then around the valve here there's supposed to be a rubber seal, and it's only half there and it's real hard. So alright, so it appears she doesn't even have a boot on it. So what happens is the oil comes up through the push rod and goes down the rocker and runs down the valve, keeps all this lubricated, and then if there's oil can get by and down to here, it'll run next to the valve into the combustion chamber. So I'll grab the boots and the O-ring and we'll stick her back together. Alright, so now we can slide our little umbrella seal over the valve. Push that all the way down. Then we got a new little O-ring that this part was actually missing, or mostly gone on the old one. So we'll slide him down into the second groove. And then I'll loosen up our nut. Slide our valve spring back on. Put our spring compressor on. Get this lined up as best as possible. We can tighten our nut down a little bit. If you don't back that nut off, sometimes that retainer can catch and push the valve down, which we don't want. Then we just slide our retainer clips back in. Oop. Come on. There we go. Then we can let up on our valve. And that one is done. Now we'll just repeat for the intake. So now we got everything back together, we can put the rockers back on. So we're going to want to roll the engine back up to top dead center, the piston up, and then we can put our rockers on and temporarily set them. And I forgot I had this handy dandy camera, so we can take a look inside, which she's got some pretty good scoring on the cylinder. You can see that. See all them streaks on there, but we can just use this to watch the cylinder come back up. So now, since we're back at top dead center, the valves should be closed. So we can put our rocker back on. Snug them down. Just so she's snug. Now, to set them, back them off just till they're loose. Okay, so basically what we want to do now on a normal good engine, the lifters, which can move and compress, so oil pressure is what keeps them pushed out, and that takes up the cushion and the shock from moving the valve up and down. This old girl, I'm guessing the lifters probably drain out right away, so we don't want to go too tight. So basically we'll sit and spin the push rod and just tighten down till we feel some tension. And we can't spin the push rod anymore. Which is right there. And that's good enough for now. Now when we get all done with all the seals, we'll go back around and actually set the rockers. And this girl, we might have to just fire it up and set them by sound. But this one is ready to go. So next we'll go around and we'll take all the rest of the rockers off. I'll have to pull that valve cover off the other side. We'll pull all that stuff off that side, get the wiring out of the way, pull the cover off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this cylinder back down to the bottom. So the firing order on a Chevy V8 is 18436572. So every 90 degrees another piston will be at the bottom. So right now 1 and 6 should both be at bottom when we turn it down there, because 1 and 6 will be in the same position. 8 and 5, 4, 7, 3, and 2. So we'll just pull all the rockers off. We can do number 6 right away because that piston will be at bottom. Then we'll turn it 90 degrees, do the next 2 all the way on through all of them. So we'll get all them seals put in, and then we'll get the rockers set. Well, we got all the seals in, all the springs back on. Now, the last time I did this was, let's see, 24-ish years ago, when I was like 16 on my old 68 Chevy pickup. And it was just as nerve-wracking this time as it was then, worrying about a valve dropping down in the cylinder. I had one that came loose and started leaking real bad over here on this side. But I was able to grab it with the vice grips and spin it a little bit and get it sealed back up. So now we'll go on to putting all the rockers back on, and then I'll turn it over each one to top dead center on compression and set each one like we did these roughly. And then we'll leave the valve covers off for now. And we'll probably work on getting some of that vacuum line buttoned up, plugged off. So I'll get the rockers back on and we'll go from there. All right, we got all the rockers set. So now I'm just going to hop in, spin her over with the key for a little bit, let the oil pump up them lifters, and then we'll run back around and check them all. These old wore out engines aren't super specific. We just don't want them too loose. So, and I don't want to put the valve covers on, take them off again, or start it up running and get oil everywhere. So we'll spin her over for a little bit, get everything pumped up. And I also stuck the compression gauge in number 1, which probably should have done before we took everything apart, because that one probably didn't have any. But we'll spin her over. See what we got. $145.9. It's actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Anywhere 150 to 170 is probably about normal for an old 350. So should be good. So now I'll go back top dead center on number 1 and run around each one and check them, see where they're at after we got some oil pumped up in there, and we'll go from there. All right, so I went ahead and threw the new gaskets on the valve covers. I just put a thin bead of silicone around each one. We'll let them set, that way it doesn't fall off when you're trying to put it on. And then I'm going to go ahead and throw a new set of spark plugs in it. We'll get the valve covers back on, and then we'll get to work on all them vacuum lines, figure out what we need and what we don't. And then on to spark plug wires, I guess. So get them spark plugs thrown in. All right, we got our valve covers on, buttoned up, and also I went around and hooked all the vacuum lines up that are left on top of the motor back up. Well, they still had some memory in them, so I get them hooked back up right, but most of them, as you can see, this breather hose just broke. A lot of this stuff is just so loose, they just fall right off. So I'm guessing she was leaking vacuum on all that. So I'm just going to replace them one by one. Of course, we won't hook any of this stuff back up. We'll just cut that stuff off and hook the stuff up on the motor that's needed. I don't even know if it's all needed, but some of it I don't know what it does. So we're just going to put new line on everything here, and then we'll get some spark plug wires on it. So I inspected all the hoses and they're all pretty good, so I didn't have to replace a lot of them, but I did cut about 3/4 of an inch off the end of each one, and now they're all nice and tight. Put a new one on this check valve, got rid of them open T's, and then of course we plugged off the ones that were running over to that canister. So next we'll get some spark plug wires on. So I had marked number 1 here, so I'll just put them on clockwise 184366572. Hook them all back up. Got new wires. Got them laid out longest to shortest, so I'll start with the longest run and put that one on first and go from there. So we got the spark plug wires all routed and tied up. Got them away from the manifolds everywhere. Zip tied so they can't move around. So next on the agenda, we'll throw the fan and the shroud back on. Get the air cleaner on. See if she'll fire up. Well, got everything on but the air cleaner. So, I'll open the door and we'll see if it starts. Hopefully I got everything hooked back up. See how big of a mess we can make. Turn. All right. Today's flavor is Prime Guard Heavy Duty. It's specially formulated to meet or exceed tough U.S. standards. Drink her up. Definitely runs better. I don't know how long it had been running on. Three cylinders, 4 cylinders, I don't know. Thought maybe I had a little lifter click there, but it's actually that linkage going down to the dampener on the exhaust pipe is clacking away, so it's good. And she's warmed up and seems to run good, so good enough for now. It could use a little bit of carburetor work probably. When you put it in gear, she does take a little bit, like when it's cold-blooded it'll die, but much better than it was. So it's gonna do it for this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.